April 15th, 1931, Coney Island, Brooklyn. A small Italian restaurant called Nuova Villa Tamaro sits on a quiet street near the boardwalk. Inside, two men play cards at a table. One is Giuseppe Joe the Boss Masseria, 60 years old, the most powerful gangster in New York City. The other is Charles Lucky Luciano, 30 years old, Masseria's right hand, his closest confidant. They've been allies for over a decade. They've murdered people together. They've built an empire together. Luciano stands up. He says he's going to the bathroom. He excuses himself from the table. Seconds later, gunshots. Four men rush in from outside. They fire into Masseria's back, into his chest, into his face. He dies at the table, blood spreading across the cards they've been playing. They never finish the hand. Outside, the getaway car is waiting. But the driver, a man nicknamed the Artichoke King, is so terrified that another hitman, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, has to physically shove him out of the driver's seat to take the wheel. This shooting doesn't just kill a gangster, it ends an era. It triggers the reshaping of organized crime in America. And it reveals a story about betrayal, ambition, and how sometimes the real power doesn't belong to the man sitting at the top. It belongs to the younger men willing to destroy the rules that built the throne. If you want to understand how a war killed 60 men and created the structure that still dominates the Mafia today, stay with this story to the end. January 17, 1920, the 18th Amendment becomes law. Alcohol is illegal in America. For the next 13 years, one of the most profitable industries in the world becomes a criminal enterprise. In New York City, that means opportunity, massive untapped opportunity. The city's underworld fractures into competing factions. Irish gangs control certain territories. Jewish mobsters control others. But in the Italian neighborhoods of Manhattan and Brooklyn, East Harlem, Little Italy, the neighborhoods, where Sicilian and Southern Italian immigrants have built their communities, the Italian Mafia consolidates power. By 1920, a man named Giuseppe Masseria has built an organization that dominates bootlegging operations across New York. He controls alcohol distribution. He controls gambling rackets. He controls loan sharking. He's brutal, methodical, and he's made himself indispensable. Masseria is in his 50s when Prohibition begins. He's old-school Sicilian. He came to America as a young man with nothing. He didn't speak English well. He didn't understand American business, but he understood one thing: violence. He uses violence to consolidate power. He orders the killing of rivals. He eliminates competition within his own organization. He forces other gangs to pay tribute. By the late 1920s, he's the most powerful mob boss in New York City. Newspapers call him the boss. That's not a nickname. That's what everyone calls him, because it's literally what he is. He's the boss. But power in the Mafia isn't democratic. It's not about merit or ability. It's about bloodline, birthplace, and loyalty to the old ways. And the old ways, by 1930, are becoming a liability. In the late 1920s, a new generation of mobsters has emerged in New York. Men who were brought to America as children. Men who grew up here, went to American schools, learned American business practices. Men like Charles Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Albert Anastasia, Vito Genovese. These men are different from Masseria and the other mustache Petes, old Sicilian bosses who literally wore long mustaches, who refused to do business with non-Italians, who believed crime should operate under strict Sicilian traditions. The Young Turks, as they're called, see things differently. They see money. Meyer Lansky, who isn't even Italian, has shown them how to run sophisticated gambling operations. He's shown them how to move money through banks, how to hide profits, how to think like a business executive instead of a street thug. Lucky Luciano watches this. He's working under Masseria, but he's thinking about the future. And what he sees is a boss who's stuck in the past, running an organization that could be generating 3 times the profit if someone modernized it. But Masseria won't modernize. Masseria believes in the old code. He believes non-Italians should know their place. He believes tradition matters more than efficiency. He's making money, yes, but he's leaving hundreds of millions on the table because he refuses to adapt. By 1929, that tension is becoming visible. The Prohibition boom is about to end. The stock market crashes, the depression is coming, and the younger men are starting to think that maybe Masseria isn't the right person to guide them through what's ahead. This is the atmosphere in New York in early 1930. Not yet open conflict, but resentment, questions, ambitions stirring beneath the surface. That's when Salvatore Maranzano arrives from Sicily. In Sicily, there's a small town on the coast called Castellammarese del Golfo. For centuries, it's been a fishing village, but it's also been a center of Mafia power in Sicily. The most powerful Sicilian Mafia boss, Don Vito Cascioferro, looks at New York's underworld and sees something that concerns him. Too much chaos, not enough organization, too much wealth being left uncaptured. He decides to send one of his most trusted men to America to seize control. That man is Salvatore Maranzano. Maranzano is 44 years old. He's educated. Unlike Masseria, he studied to become a Catholic priest before turning to crime. He's read history. He's studied Julius Caesar, the Roman Empire, military strategy. He believes organized crime should be run like an empire, with clear hierarchies, territories, rules that everyone follows. More importantly, he's brought with him a faction of Sicilian mobsters from Castellammarese del Golfo. These are men born in the same town, connected by blood and Sicilian tradition. Among them is Joseph Bonanno, a man who will later become one of New York's most powerful bosses. There's also Stefano Magaddino from Buffalo, Joseph Profaci from Brooklyn, and others. All Castellammarese natives, all connected to Maranzano, all ready to fight for him. When Maranzano arrives in New York, Masseria views him as a threat, which he is. Maranzano isn't interested in coexisting with Masseria. He's interested in replacing him. The stage is set for a confrontation, two factions, two visions of what organized crime should be, two bosses who both believe they should control New York. But the war doesn't start as open conflict between Maranzano and Masseria. It starts with something smaller, something that looks like a routine killing, something that seems insignificant at the moment, but it's not. It's the first domino. February 26, 1930. 2:30 p.m., a man named Gaetano Reina is walking through East Harlem. Reina has been a Masseria ally for years. He controls the ice distribution racket in the Bronx and Harlem, a significant operation that generates substantial profit. A young hitman named Vito Genovese steps out and shoots Reina dead. It's quick, it's brutal, it's done in broad daylight. Masseria ordered the hit. But why? Reina was loyal. Reina was profitable. There's no obvious reason to kill him. Except there is. Masseria fears that Reina's loyalty is wavering. Masseria suspects that Reina might be considering switching to Maranzano's faction. And Masseria has learned that the best way to prevent betrayal is to eliminate the possibility before it happens. But killing Reina creates an immediate problem. Reina has family. Reina has crew members. Reina's organization has to be managed. Masseria appoints a man named Joseph Pinzolo to take over the ice distribution racket. The Reina family doesn't accept this. They don't accept that their boss is dead and some outsiders taking over their operation. More importantly, they realize something crucial. If Masseria can kill an ally this casually, none of them are safe. None of them have real security. So the Reina family makes a decision. They switch to Maranzano's faction. They throw their support behind the Castellammarese. It's a small move, one family defecting. But it's the beginning of a cascade. It's the signal that Masseria's grip on power is starting to slip. Within weeks, more violence erupts. July 15, 1930. Vito Bonventre, a Castellammarese member, is gunned down outside his garage. Masseria ordered it. August 15, 1930. Giuseppe Morello, a key Masseria enforcer, is killed in his East Harlem office by Castellammarese hitmen. A man named Giuseppe Pereno is also in the office. They kill him too. Innocent bystander. August 23, 1930. Joseph Pinzolo, the man Masseria appointed to run the ice racket, is shot and killed in a Times Square office. The Reina family did it, September 9, 1930. Another killing, October 23, 1930. Masseria orders the murder of Joe Aiello, president of the Chicago Unione Siciliane, a Castellammarese ally. Aiello is shot dead on a Chicago street in a display of force meant to send a message. Masseria is still powerful, still dangerous, still in control. But Masseria is losing control. He just doesn't know it yet. November 5th, 1930. Almineo, a member of Masseria's organization, is killed. Steve Farino, another Masseria lieutenant, is killed the same day. The violence is accelerating, the body count is rising, and something crucial is happening. Members of Masseria's organization are starting to switch sides. Frank Scalise, who takes over after Mineo's death, looks around and realizes the Castellammarese are winning. He defects to Maranzano's faction. Others follow. Tommy Galliano defects. Tommy Lucchesi, one of the most capable operators in Masseria's organization, starts communicating with Maranzano. The organization that seemed so solid is crumbling. By November 1930, the war is roughly 8 months old, and already the outcome is becoming apparent. Masseria is losing. But he still has one advantage. He still has Lucky Luciano. Lucky Luciano is the most capable operator in Masseria's organization. He's smart, ruthless, and he understands the modern business better than Masseria. He's 28 years old in 1930. He's been with Masseria since his late teens. Luciano watches the war unfold. He watches his boss lose support. He watches members defect. He watches the violence escalate, and he realizes something crucial. This war is destroying profit. Prohibition is about to end. The Depression has arrived. Money is tighter. And here they are, losing men, losing operations, losing territory, all over a war between two old bosses who can't adapt to the modern world. Luciano is quoted as saying, "We was in a business that had to keep moving without explosions every 2 minutes. We couldn't operate until it stopped." This is the mindset of the Young Turks. The war isn't glorious. It's not about honor or tradition. It's bad for business. Luciano starts thinking, Maranzano is winning the war. That means if Masseria falls, Maranzano will be the undisputed boss. Maranzano will want loyalty. Maranzano will want control. Maranzano will demand absolute obedience to the old code. But what if there was another way? What if, instead of serving under either Masseria or Maranzano, Luciano could make a deal? What if he could arrange for Masseria to be eliminated, but position himself as Maranzano's right hand? What if he could take over Masseria's organization? In late 1930, Luciano begins secret communications with Maranzano. The conversations between Luciano and Maranzano happen quietly. They're careful. Neither man wants it known that they're negotiating. Masseria would kill them both if he found out. But by early 1931, a deal is struck. Here's the arrangement. Luciano will arrange for Masseria to be murdered. He'll do it from inside. He'll set it up. He'll make sure Masseria is killed. In exchange, Maranzano will give Luciano all of Masseria's operations. Luciano will become the boss of his own family, taking over the territory and rackets that Masseria currently controls. Luciano will be Maranzano's lieutenant, but he'll have real power, real autonomy, real profit. For Maranzano, this solves a problem. By early 1931, even though his faction is winning the war, he's worried about one thing. What if Luciano stays loyal to Masseria? What if Luciano decides to fight to the end? Luciano is too smart, too capable, too dangerous to have as an enemy. Better to make him an ally. For Luciano, this is everything. He gets to eliminate his boss, take his position, and do it with Maranzano's blessing. He doesn't have to lead a desperate fight against Masseria's remaining loyalists. He doesn't have to risk his own life in direct combat. He just has to set up a meeting. The deal is finalized by early April 1931. Masseria's days are numbered, and he doesn't know it. April 15th, 1931. Luciano invites Masseria to dinner at Nuova Villa Tamaro, a small Italian restaurant in Coney Island. Nothing unusual. They've eaten together many times. It's routine. Masseria shows up. They sit down, they order food, they start playing cards, Italian card games, relaxed, comfortable, at least to Masseria, who has no idea what's about to happen. Luciano excuses himself. He says he's going to the bathroom. He gets up from the table and walks away. At that exact moment, 4 men who've been waiting outside enter the restaurant. They've been given a description. An older Italian man seated at the card table. One of them is Albert Anastasia, a brutal enforcer. Another is Vito Genovese. There's Joe Adonis and Benjamin Bugsy Siegel, a Jewish gangster, which tells you something about the changing nature of the underworld. In Masseria's era, a Jewish hitman killing an Italian mob boss would have been unthinkable. But this is a new generation. This is the world Luciano is building. They approach Masseria's table. He looks up, confused. He doesn't have time to process what's happening before they open fire. Multiple shots, point-blank range. Masseria dies at the table, slumped over the cards. The hitmen run outside. The getaway driver, Ciro Artichoke King Terranova, is waiting. But Terranova is shaking so badly that he can barely hold the wheel. He's so terrified that Bugsy Siegel has to physically push him out of the driver's seat and take control of the car himself. They speed away. The police arrive minutes later. The most powerful mobster in New York City is dead, and his own lieutenant arranged it. The Castellammarese War isn't over yet, but with Masseria's death, its outcome is determined. The war now enters its final phase. The cleanup. The elimination of the old guard. The establishment of a new order. That cleanup will be just as brutal as everything that came before. When we left off, Giuseppe Joe the Boss Masseria had just been assassinated at Nuova Villa Tammaro on April 15, 1931. His lieutenant, Lucky Luciano, had arranged the hit as part of a deal with Salvatore Maranzano, leader of the Castellammarese faction. With Masseria dead, the war that had killed dozens of men over 14 months officially ended. But the story doesn't end there. The war's conclusion is actually when the real transformation begins. After Masseria's death, Luciano becomes the boss of Masseria's organization. He inherits all the territories, rackets, and operations that Masseria controlled. He's 30 years old. He's suddenly one of the most powerful mobsters in New York. Maranzano, as agreed, ratifies this. Luciano becomes Maranzano's lieutenant. Technically, Maranzano is still the supreme boss. He's given himself the title Capo di tutti capi, boss of all bosses. Everyone reports to him. But Maranzano is a problem. Even though his faction won the war, he's a man of the old world. He's studied Julius Caesar and Roman military hierarchy, and he's decided that the Mafia should be organized like the Roman Empire, a strict pyramid with him at the top, absolute authority, everybody else below. This doesn't work in America. The Young Turks, Lucky Luciano, Vito Genovese, Meyer Lansky, Albert Anastasia, and others, don't want to answer to one supreme boss. They're not Sicilian traditionalists. They're Americans. They want autonomy. They want profit. They want to control their own territories without having to ask permission for every decision. Maranzano doesn't understand this, or he understands it and doesn't care. He's been in America for less than a year. He's lived in Sicily his entire life. He believes the old way is the right way. So he does something that turns out to be catastrophic. He starts consolidating power. He starts firing captains who are too independent. He starts reducing the territory of men who might challenge him. He starts gathering intelligence on which bosses might be disloyal. His spies report something that alarms him. Lucky Luciano is becoming too powerful. Luciano is expanding his operations. Luciano is working with Meyer Lansky, a Jewish mobster. Luciano is talking about modernizing the way organized crime operates. He's talking about cooperation instead of hierarchy. He's talking about democracy, each family having equal status, each boss having equal voice. This is heresy to Maranzano. This is a challenge to his authority. Maranzano makes a decision. He's going to eliminate Luciano. In September 1931, roughly 5 months after Masseria's death, Maranzano calls Luciano to a meeting. The purpose is supposedly routine business, but Luciano's people learn something alarming. Maranzano is planning to kill Luciano at this meeting. Maranzano has hired hitmen. He's arranged to have them present. The plan is simple. Luciano arrives, they kill him. It's done. But Luciano doesn't make it to that meeting. He gets tipped off. Who tips him off? Sources differ. Some say it's Tommy Lucchese, one of Maranzano's lieutenants, who realizes that Maranzano is becoming unstable and dangerous to everyone. Others say it's another Maranzano ally who fears that if Maranzano succeeds in killing Luciano, he'll next turn on other ambitious captains. Regardless, Luciano learns that his life is in danger. And unlike Masseria, who never suspected Luciano, Luciano is thinking 3 steps ahead. He realizes something crucial. If Maranzano is willing to kill him, then Maranzano is a threat to all the young Turks. And if Luciano doesn't move first, he'll be dead. And if he dies, the old guard, the mustache Petes like Maranzano, will remain in power. Luciano also realizes something else. Maranzano is hated. He's been boss of bosses for only 5 months. In those 5 months, he's fired people, he's reduced territories, he's created resentment throughout the entire underworld. He's made enemies. So Luciano does what he did to Masseria. He arranges a hit. September 10th, 1931. Maranzano's office. He's on the 9th floor of a building at 230 Park Avenue in Manhattan. Modern skyscraper, professional office. Maranzano runs his operation out of here. This is where he conducts business. He's expecting an important visitor. Someone has told him that federal agents are coming to serve him a subpoena regarding tax issues. This is partly true. The feds are actually investigating him. But the federal agents who are about to arrive aren't real agents. They're hitmen. 4 of them. They're dressed as federal agents. They're carrying badges. They're impersonating law enforcement. This is important because it shows how the new guard operates differently from the old guard. Maranzano's men would never have thought to use deception like this. They would have just walked in and shot Maranzano. But Luciano has learned from working with Meyer Lansky, a Jewish mobster known for sophisticated operations, deception, strategy, misdirection. The fake federal agents arrive at Maranzano's office. Maranzano sees men in suits showing badges, carrying documents. He thinks they're real agents. He's calm. He's cooperating. They ask him to come with them. He does. As he's standing, they pull guns. They start shooting. Multiple gunshots. Maranzano falls. He's already mortally wounded. But they don't stop. They stab him multiple times with knives. It's vicious. It's personal. When they finally leave, Salvatore Maranzano is dead. The 9th floor of 230 Park Avenue, today known as the Helmsley Building, becomes the site where the old guard Mafia dies. With Maranzano's death on September 10, 1931, the era of the mustache Petes is officially over. These were the old guard Sicilian bosses who refused to adapt. They had ruled through tradition, through old world codes, through fear and violence, but without the business sophistication that the modern world demanded. They lost. Not because they were weak, but because they were inflexible. Masseria lost because he couldn't see that the Young Turks had a better vision for organized crime. Maranzano lost because he was so committed to hierarchy and control that he alienated the people beneath him. Both men died not because they were outfought, but because they were outthought. Luciano didn't defeat them in direct combat. He outmaneuvered them. He played politics. He understood psychology. He knew how to make allies and eliminate enemies through strategy rather than just firepower. The Castellammarese War officially lasted from February 26, 1930 to April 15, 1931, just over a year. But the real transformation continued through September 1931 with Maranzano's death. In total, the conflict claimed dozens of lives. Estimates vary. Some sources say 40 deaths, others say 60. A few claim higher. The exact number is uncertain because many killings were never formally solved. Gang members who disappeared were found weeks or months later, bullet-riddled and dumped. Some bodies were never found at all. But the documented major kills are clear. Gaetano Reina, February 26, 1930. Vito Bonventre, July 15, 1930. Giuseppe Morello, August 15, 1930. Joseph Pinzolo, September 9, 1930. Joe Aiello, October 23, 1930. Almineo and Steve Ferrigno, November 5, 1930. Joseph Catania, February 3, 1931. Giuseppe Masseria, April 15, 1931. Salvatore Maranzano, September 10, 1931. Plus dozens of lower-ranking soldiers and associates whose names were never widely reported in the press. After Maranzano's death, Lucky Luciano faces a problem. Organized crime in New York is in chaos. 2 bosses are dead. The traditional hierarchy is destroyed. Everyone is wondering what comes next. Some people might expect Luciano to declare himself the new capo di tutti capi, just like Maranzano did. Some might expect him to consolidate absolute power, to eliminate anyone who might challenge him, to establish himself as the sole supreme boss. But Luciano is smarter than that. He's learned from watching both Masseria and Maranzano fail. He understands that if he tries to rule from above, he'll eventually face the same fate. Someone younger, hungrier, smarter will eventually betray him. So Luciano does something revolutionary. He abolishes the position of capo di tutti capi. He says that no single man should have absolute power. Instead, he proposes that the major families of New York be organized as equal partners. Here's what Luciano proposes. The 5 families of New York should be the Luciano family, which will later be called the Genovese family, the Bonanno family, formerly the Maranzano family, taken over by Joseph Bonanno, the Gambino family, formerly known as other names but officially organized under that family structure, the Lucchese family, run by Tommy Lucchese, the Colombo family, run by Joseph Profaci. Each family controls its own territory. Each family operates its own rackets. Each family has autonomy within its own domain. But none of them has absolute authority over the others. Instead, Luciano creates a governing body called the Commission. The Commission is a board of directors for organized crime in America. It's not just the 5 New York families. Luciano travels around the country and meets with major mob bosses from Chicago, Kansas City, Los Angeles, New Orleans, and other cities. He proposes that each family send a representative to this commission. The commission's job is to settle disputes between families, approve major operations, set rules that everyone follows, prevent exactly the kind of bloody gang war that just devastated New York. It's organized crime as a business corporation, with territory as market sectors, with profits as quarterly earnings, with disputes settled by negotiation rather than violence. This is completely different from how the Mafia operated under Masseria or the old Sicilian bosses. This is American business structure applied to criminal enterprise, and it works. The commission is established in late 1931, and amazingly, it actually functions. It prevents wars. It settles disputes. It creates stability for decades. The 5-family structure is so effective that it becomes the model for organized crime across America. Other cities eventually adopt similar structures. The commission becomes the foundational principle of La Cosa Nostra. The Cosa Nostra is Italian for our thing, and it's the official name for the American Mafia that emerges from the ashes of the Castellammarese War. Here's the fascinating irony of the Castellammarese War. On paper, the Castellammarese faction won. Maranzano and his allies defeated Masseria. They were victorious. But in reality, the winners of the war were the Young Turks, the people who had nothing to do with either the Castellammarese or Masseria, but who used the war as an opportunity to seize power. Lucky Luciano, Vito Genovese, Albert Anastasia, Meyer Lansky. These men didn't care who won the war between old guard Sicilians. What they cared about was that the war presented an opportunity for them to rise. Luciano started as Masseria's lieutenant. By the end of the war, he was one of the most powerful bosses in America. Genovese started as one of Masseria's enforcers. He became a power player. These men were smarter about recognizing opportunity than either Masseria or Maranzano, and they were ruthless about exploiting it. Meanwhile, both of the original combatants are dead. Masseria died first, but he died at Luciano's hands. Maranzano died shortly after, also at Luciano's hands. Neither of them got to enjoy the fruits of victory because they both lost to someone they underestimated. The Castellammarese War teaches a lesson that would reverberate through the history of organized crime. In power struggles, it's not always the people fighting that win. Sometimes it's the people waiting on the sidelines, watching, learning, and making moves when everyone is distracted by the main conflict. The Castellammarese War killed somewhere between 40 and 60 men over the course of about a year. That's significant violence. That's body counts that would attract FBI attention and newspaper headlines. But the real significance of the war wasn't the deaths, it was the transformation. Before the Castellammarese War, the Mafia was fragmented. Different families in different territories, not really coordinated. It was run by old-world Sicilian principles, strict tradition, resistance to change. There was no mechanism to prevent wars. When disputes arose, they escalated into bloodshed. It was a criminal enterprise, yes, but not a well-organized one. After the Castellammarese War, the Mafia was organized into the 5 families, clear structure, clear hierarchy within each family. It was run by Americans who understood American business. The commission brought rational, business-like governance. There was now a mechanism to settle disputes without war. It became one of the most sophisticated criminal organizations in history. Family's structure lasted until law enforcement began systematically prosecuting mob bosses in the 1980s and 1990s. That's 50-plus years of stability created by what Luciano established in 1931. The commission lasted even longer. Elements of it still exist today. The concept that families should be equal partners rather than subservient to one boss still governs how the modern mafia operates. The Castellammarese War marks the definitive end of an era. Before 1931, organized crime in America was controlled by Sicilian immigrants who had come to America as adults, who thought in Italian, who believed in old country traditions. After 1931, organized crime was controlled by Italian Americans who had been born here or raised here, who thought in English, who understood American business, who believed in pragmatism over tradition. This was a fundamental shift. The old guard believed that respect came from following the code, from maintaining traditions, from preserving Sicilian customs. The new guard believed that respect came from making money, from being smart, from adapting to circumstances. The war between Masseria and Maranzano was really a war between these two philosophies, and the new philosophy won. Charles Lucky Luciano's vision of organized crime, rational, businesslike, willing to work with non-Italians, focused on profit above tradition, became the dominant model. It made organized crime more efficient, more profitable, and ultimately more dangerous to law enforcement, but it also made organized crime more predictable, more rule-based, more capable of self-governance. The Mafia after Luciano wasn't less criminal, but it was more organized, more corporate, more sophisticated. Between 40 and 60 men died. That's not just a number, that's 40 to 60 families. It's widows, it's children who lost fathers, it's parents who buried sons. Most of these men were criminals. Most were willing participants in violence. Most had blood on their own hands. But the war demonstrated something about organized crime, that personal loyalty, despite all the rituals and codes emphasizing it, was ultimately fragile. Men betrayed their bosses, men switched sides, men killed their own allies. Lucky Luciano killed his boss, Giuseppe Masseria, the man who had taken him in when he was young, who had taught him the business. That act revealed the truth. In organized crime, there is no real loyalty. There's only calculation. There's only what's good for me. Luciano's betrayal worked. It made him powerful. It made him rich. It made him one of the most important figures in the history of American organized crime. But it also set a precedent. If the rules of loyalty are optional, if it's every man for himself, then the structure he built, the commission, the 5 families, the supposed organization of organized crime, is actually fragile. It only works as long as everyone believes it works. And eventually, that belief breaks down. The Castellammarese War ended on April 15, 1931, with Masseria's death. It continued through September 1931 with Maranzano's assassination. In total, it transformed American organized crime. 2 old men are dead. Their vision of how crime should be organized is dead. They're replaced by younger men with a different vision, a vision that would dominate for the next 50 years. But the war's legacy extends beyond the 1930s. The structure that emerged from this conflict, the commission, the 5 families, the principle that families should be equal partners, influenced how organized crime operated for decades. It created something that looked like democracy in the underworld, even though it was still fundamentally a criminal enterprise. The Castellammarese War teaches several lessons. 1. Traditional power is vulnerable to challenges from below. Masseria was the most powerful mobster in New York. but he lost to a man he trusted. 2. Adaptation beats tradition. The Young Turks won because they understood the modern world better than the old guard. 3. Organization beats chaos. Luciano's creation of the commission meant that organized crime would be more stable, more predictable, less prone to self-destructive wars. 4. Personal loyalty is less important than personal interest. Both Masseria and Maranzano were betrayed by people they trusted because those people saw an opportunity to advance themselves. The war killed 60 men, but it created an organization that would endure for generations. That organization shaped American crime for the rest of the 20th century. Salvatore Maranzano wanted to be capo di tutti capi, boss of all bosses. He got to be that for exactly 5 months before he was assassinated. Lucky Luciano wanted to create a system where no one person had absolute power. He wanted bosses to be equals, subject to rules, members of a commission rather than subjects of a king. Luciano's vision won. Not because it was more honorable, but because it was smarter, it was more stable, it was more profitable. And it emerged not from the traditional paths of power, but from the chaos of war, from a young man watching 2 old men fight and then moving decisively to eliminate both of them and replace them with himself. The Castellammarese War created the modern Mafia, and it did so through the vision of one man who understood that the future belonged not to those who held power, but to those who could imagine a better system.